There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, the Dwarves.
One, two, three, set, go.
You are tuned into the Power Chord Hour right here on 107.9 WRFA, or maybe listening on the Power Chord Hour podcast. However you are listening, thanks for tuning into this one. I'm your host, Anthony Merchant. I'm very excited today. We're talking to Mr. Blag Dahlia of the Dwarves. And not only that, I mean, he is staying extremely busy, has a new record out under the name Ralph Champagne. It is titled Introducing Ralph Champagne. He also just wrote a new book, Highland Falls, have an audiobook coming out. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. The man is staying busy with some quality stuff out here. So let's talk Ralph Champagne, Dwarves, writing, and all that stuff with Blag. Blag, how are you?
I feel strong. I feel great.
I
got all kinds of stuff out.
You do. I mean, you truly are staying busy. It's insane the amount you have going on right now. So I mean, I wanna start. I've had a really good time listening to the Ralph Champagne album. It's been quite a fun listen. And I mean, I want to go back a little bit. Like, how far back did you start working on like the ideas and concept for Ralph Champagne? I mean, is this something
way back? I've made some. Most of the records I made are like the Dwarves, so it sort of alternates between sort of hardcore punk and like pop punk and sort of the harder genres like that. But every once in a while, I'll make a solo record. Like I made a bluegrass record back in the 90s called Earl Lee Grace. And I made kind of a pop, little poppy, retro-y record about 13, 14 years ago called Candy Now. So I've done these little side projects, but this one was really a whole different element. This was like, and by the time it was over, I realized it had to have a whole new character and a whole new thing. And so it's been kind of a wild ride. It was my pandemic record, and it was just different than anything I've done. We started with the vocals and then kind of made the record inside out from there. So it was very, very strange.
I was kind of thinking about this too. I mean, and for people who are maybe familiar with the Dwarves but haven't heard the new record, I mean, it is definitely different from the Dwarves. And like, I was just thinking about it, I mean, even though you guys change up your sound, and I mean, the Dwarves have, I feel like, different sounds and eras and things like that. Coming into this, like, how much of that Ralph Champagne sound and stuff was already in your head? You know what I mean? Because like, this is
this is more what I would listen to. I was always one of those people who made much more aggressive music than I actually listened to. I kind of like retro stuff and old jazz records and old country records and that kind of thing, but I never wanted to sort of try and imitate that, like hardcore came along when I was a kid, and it was sort of the music of the moment, and kind of I pushed forward on that. But I always listened to a lot of just all kinds of American retro music, and I mean, going back really long way to the, the 20s and even the teens, and, just sort of the American songbook and that kind of thing. And it was kind of hard to tell that was there with Dwarves music, because it was sort of more kind of obviously dirty and scatological and nasty, and a lot of nudity and a lot of really fast tempos. And so people didn't really catch that there were a lot of kind of retro Americana ideas in there musically. Some people picked up on that. A lot of people didn't, So for me, this is kind of the logical extension of just what I listen to,
Was there, I mean, it does sound that way then. I mean, even before hitting record on these songs, it sounds like you already kind of knew what this is going to sound like, what this should be like. I mean, it sounds like that was all pretty well conceived or whatever.
Yes and no. I mean, I thank you for saying that, but really what I had was the songs, the vocal melodies and the chords. And then I sang them, and it was during the pandemic. So, originally you're always saying like, well, let's get a good group together. We'll play these songs and then I'll sing them. But instead, I just kind of sang them over my own terrible guitar playing. And then I threw away the guitar and said, okay, let's just start a record from this vocal. Because I knew the vocals were there. We'd really put a lot of work into them. Me and Andy Carpenter is the guy that I made this record with, and he was really there from the beginning, helping me shape the songs. But it was, that was sort of what I had, was just lyrics and chords. And then, we just started adding people to it. And more, I started to realize, like, ooh, wow, the way they played that's kind of a yacht rock song. Or, oh, wow, the way you play that, it's really kind of, trucker country, or the way you play that is kind of, Tex-Mex or whatever. These different genres would come out just based on how these guys played. The song was already there in terms of the lyrics and the vocal melody, but everything else was really, the musicians had a lot to do with it. Tom Ayers, who played bass and guitar all over this record, and Josh Freese, who played the drums. Andy Carpenter played a lot of guitar, keyboards, arranged a lot of things. And so they kind of set the template for what it was really going to sound like. I mean, I wish I could say that I had conceived of all that, but I sort of was smart enough to know that they were doing something good, and so I just kind of stuck with it. But it wasn't like I knew what this thing was going to sound like.
Kind of going off that too, and I mean, giving the other musicians kind of free rein in that way. I mean, were you then kind of vague with them on what you wanted? Was it kind of like, hey, I don't give a shit what you guys do. You do your thing and put it on here? I mean, did you give them much direction of like, this is kind of how I want it to sound? I mean, how...
Yes. I mean, it's a combination of things. I mean, I guess the way it works is I kind of consider making a record the way people make movies, Your big job is to get the right people. And once you get people that are good, that you trust, then you can kind of let them do what they want. And it's not so much that you're saying, I don't give a shit. It's that you're saying, I respect you. Do what you feel here. Because if I came in and said, play exactly these notes, then it more and more it's circumscribed what they can come up with. Whereas if I say, I kind of want this to kind of sound like, Jimmy Buffett meets Bill Monroe. It's kind of like, okay, what the fuck? And then they do something, or I would, there were different songs, like for Elementary Love Song. I mean, I had a great fiddle player, Jesse Olema, to come in and play a bunch of the country songs where I knew I wanted fiddle. And then just hearing him play, I thought, well, this guy's really good. So I'm going to set him loose on some of these other songs where I don't know what I want. And so I would say things like, can you make this like a bad Italian restaurant? And that's how Lolita Goodbye came about. Or with Elementary Love Song, I said, can you make this like, Captain and Tennille kind of cheesy 70s disco violin, which is much different than like a country part or something. So if you have people that are good, then you can kind of tell them things that are abstract, and then they'll come up with something really good, but that's sort of another level of the game. You got to kind of know what you're doing to get to that point.
I was going to say, I mean, that is also a testament to, I mean, I guess you already kind of, working with them in the past and stuff, and also them just as musicians where you can do that and you can get something amazing out of it. Because even the descriptions you're talking about, like listening to the record, I feel like they conveyed it quite well. I feel like those ideas and stuff came out in record, like the way you're explaining it, like that.
Yeah, I mean, different people produce differently. I produce, I think, more in that kind of Rick Rubin, like I like cool records way, where it's like, I don't think me and Rick Rubin could tell you what note you're supposed to play. We don't know, but we can go, can you kind of, and then you, if you're good, can come up with something and we'll go, that's it, So, I mean, I don't mean to put myself up with Rick Rubin, but I mean, there's different ways that people produce. Some people produce from a very I'm a musician point of view, and they say, these are the notes I want you playing. This is what I want to convey, and God bless them. I just don't work that way. I don't really know how,
On that side, I mean, like the production side, I mean, I know you have done some. Have you done like a decent amount of producing for other bands and stuff? Like, do you enjoy the producer role? Do you like kind of being in that side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I love producing, but production is a very strange thing to do. at this point, I basically produce things that I perform and write. Whereas back in the day, in the 90s, there was a couple bucks to be made. I would do an indie record for somebody or a punk record, and just be the producer and kind of guide them on their songs and find them holes, fill the holes where they didn't have it. If they didn't have a good drummer, I knew a good drummer. If they didn't have a good bass player, I knew a good bass player, and we'd figure things out. And, I helped a lot of smaller bands make what I considered to be really cool records. But, production, you're not really doing it unless you make a hit, like that's sort of what producers do, is make hits. And so, after a while, just kind of doing a band's record didn't really hold the same appeal for me, and the budgets changed, and stuff like that. So I sort of got to a point where if I'm going to produce it, then I want to know that it's going to be great, and so I kind of have to write it and perform it and do it,
Well, that part I feel like is kind of weird, including from someone, I mean, obviously you're established with the Dwarves and everything else you do, where it's like, to put that energy and effort in someone else's music, it's almost like, I feel like that even in itself could be difficult, because it's almost like you can put that in your own, you know what I mean? It's not like you don't create your own music, you're not doing that. So it's like, I don't know, working on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about, to use a trendy word, synergy, right? I mean, so I'm 56 years old. So there's a lot of people for whom anything I perform, they're not interested in, just as a function of I'm 56 years old. So if you have a certain kind of song, it has to be performed by an 18-year-old cute person, because a bunch of 18-year-old cute people are going to go consume that, and that's what they want. They don't want to look at me do it, even if it was going to be just what they wanted to hear, which it wouldn't be anyway. But, it's, do you know what I'm saying? Like, the great thing about production is when you find the perfect artist with the perfect song, and then you produce it in the perfect way, and it just goes boom, like this is this great thing. And I was always looking for that, but I never really found that with other artists. I made some cool records, I think, with other artists. But the way I like to work with other artists now is to put them on my record, as opposed to saying, okay, this is your record and I'm at your service and I'm going to try and produce this for you, because my experiences with that were more uneven. Sometimes it'd be really fun and people would really understand what you were doing. But a lot of times, artists are just nervous, they don't know what to do. Even if they're very talented, they don't know what to do, and so they hear something new and they go, that doesn't sound like me. And it's like, well, but you told me you didn't like this on your last record, so I tried to make this, it's different. It's like, but it's not me anymore, and so, you have these strange things that come up with artists. But I mean, I'm not closed off to it. I would do it. It's just for the amount of time and energy I put into things, I like to have control over it and know how it's going to come out and what it's going to be, but there are certain kinds of songs that you really have to do with other people, and they have to be the artist,
I want to get into recording with Introducing Ralph Champagne. I mean, was this all recorded in like one studio? Was this all, I mean, I know we were talking like pandemic and everything. Like, was this?
No, it was, so the way it started, it was January of 2020. And I went in with Andy Carpenter, and I think I recorded like 25 or more songs.
Oh,
and
wow.
They were songs from over the gamut of my career. Some of them were pretty new, and some of them were songs that have been kicking around, since pretty early in the Dwarves thing. Like, there were old songs that I had made that in my mind were just kind of like, okay, this is a simple song. I play it on an acoustic guitar. This is how it goes. And then I started thinking about them more like just vocal parts. Like, what if I just sang this vocal, but it wasn't just me playing a guitar, but it was something else? And so I sang all these songs just to try and figure out, what's the tempo of this song? What's the key of this song? And I did that with Andy Carpenter on a number of songs. And then it broke down like, there's this almost kind of countryish retro record here somewhere. When you carve away certain of those songs, you wind up with the sculpture of this record that remained, this Introducing Ralph Champagne. And so as I started doing it, and I said, okay, let's just get a perfect vocal on here. and the songs just got sung like over a guitar part, and it was just a guitar part and a click track and me. And then when I loved all the vocals, I said, okay, now let's make a record. We had just a click track and a vocal. So then you go to Josh Freese at his place, and he's, you know, such a good player that he kind of starts to interpret this, even with no bass and no other guitar except mine. You know, he figures out where the song is and what it's supposed to be in it, you know, and so that's kind of part of the arrangement. So again, that's where the lucky shit comes in, where it's just like, oh, if I didn't have him at that point, I wouldn't have known that this was kind of Latin feeling or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So then these guys start to define what the record is. And then Tom Ayers comes in, and, you know, fortunately he came down and listened to Josh play over the songs. So while he's learning the songs and just learning what the progression is, he's also listening to Josh play, and he's getting turned on like, oh, I can't wait to do something on that. So then after a day of Josh, you get a couple days of Tom, and he kind of figures out what the bass is and what the acoustic guitar is. So now I've got the rhythm section of the record, and I know what that is. And there's a solid thing of chords that actually make sense, not kind of my fucked up version of what a guitar is, you know? So at that point, I mean, in terms of other musicians, we were only 3 days in.
Wow.
But yet there was all these, they're like, now I had a rhythm section, and I realized like what to do. And it was like, oh shit. Okay. So then you got to get into people that I don't necessarily know as well, violin players or pedal steel players. I don't know any pedal steel players. So then I start making phone calls, people I respect, and going, hey, you know, you had a good pedal steel player on this, you know, could you point me towards somebody, you know, and people are cool. If they know you, you know, they'll point you towards somebody who's good, you know. And then I start talking to those guys, and then they're kind of curious because it's like, wait, you're from the Dwarves? And I'm like, yeah, but this is different, you know, just listen to this. And then I play them that, and they're like, well, this song's pretty cool, and I know I kind of know who you are, so okay, you know. And then they come in, and then I get a whole new take, and then you just have to kind of work with it. And it was an odd way to make a record, but it was during the pandemic. There wasn't any other way to do it. So some of it wasn't even guys live in the studio that I could respond to. It was like guys sending me emails, you know, and that gets really confusing, because then it'll be like, ooh, I like the direction you're going in on that, but we need X, Y, and Z. So then you have to go back and forth again, and you know, people get frustrated, and it's, you know, we're not used to doing shit over email. We're used to doing live in the studio, you know. So it's hard to get your timing and get where you're going. But if you start with the kind of cake that I had, which is a great vocal, great drums, and great bass, all of these other musicians are going, okay, you know, then it's like your pride is on call. Like, well, I can already hear that this is great. I better do something great on this, you know.
You got to step
and
up.
So, yeah. And so slowly but surely, I wound up with this amazing sounding record that sounds like just a bunch of mellow guys in a room that were just going for it, having fun. You know, it's like, that wasn't what happened.
Was there, I mean, like, again, I mean, obviously you recorded that way out of circumstance. I mean, could you ever see yourself making an album in that way again, almost starting with just the vocal melodies and all that? Could you do that again?
For this character, I wouldn't do it any other way now.
That's cool.
This seems much simpler, because the vocal is the essence of it for me, because I'm the singer and a lyricist and come up with vocal melodies. So, you know, to have that first is the dream, you know. I don't think I could do it with a Dwarves record, because with the Dwarves, it's going so fast. You got guys going 250, 300 beats a minute. And so, you know, there's no way to kind of ease into that, you know, like you're either, you know, you got to be on that shit.
No, that I could definitely see why. Yeah, that may not work in every setting. But I mean, even with that, it sounds like things clicked like very fast. But before you like really were conveying this stuff to the other guys and getting it out, were you ever weary of doing it this way? Because like it came out amazing, but I also feel like if you didn't have the right musicians or something, this could have been a disaster to make a record this way.
Yeah, I mean, that's where having a great partner, Andy Carpenter, he's just a super talented guy. He plays every instrument. Plus he can sing and write. There's just nothing that he can't do, you know? So for someone like me, I'm good at sort of coming up with concepts, and then I need other people to help me execute them. I mean, it's the same way as Dwarves, you know? It's not like sometimes people think that I sort of do everything in the Dwarves, but it's actually the opposite of that. Like, I have all these guys who know how to play those instruments and make it sound like the Dwarves. And so then I go off that, you know, or and they all write songs too, and they know how to write lyrics that sound like me. So it winds up being this like posse. It's a whole collective of people making something interesting. You can only get that over a period of years, you know, once you've been doing it with people for a long time, and you have to kind of know how to play to their strengths, you know, and yeah, it's just been very gratifying. We did the same thing with the Dwarves. We got 25 basic tracks in 2 days.
Holy shit.
And that was with, you know, Josh Freese and Nick Oliveri as the rhythm section. And, you know, Fresh Prince of Darkness, Snoop Hawk, my new drummer, and a bunch of people. And we, you know, you wind up just everybody doing what they're good at, and you make this great shit really quickly. And then I start massaging it and playing with it and turning it into a record, you know. But the essence of it is just, bam, here's a band. Everybody was playing together. Everybody was in the room. This sounds great. And Ralph Champagne was just the opposite of that. You know, it was just sort of building a studio track out of nothing.
Well, it's like you said too. I mean, the Dwarves, I mean, like you can't get that overnight where like someone can know like your voicing and stuff like that and write in your style. That 100% seems like it comes from years and years of doing it and working with one another and stuff. Like you can't just pull some guy off the street and go, well, obviously you can like write like the Dwarves now. You know, you can't do it. Just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it would be impossible to write like that. But even trying to play like that is very difficult. I bring in guys who I think are good and they think they're good, but it's harder to play Dwarves music. It's so fast and yet it's supposed to rock. It's not fast and hard in the sense of like a very precise speed metal band that's supposed to be fast and hard. It's still supposed to rock and feel comfortable and good, but at 300 beats a minute going, you know, it's so hard to find the air in that music and what makes it rock. Yeah, it would be very hard to explain to somebody who tries to come in and do it.
Yeah, just come in and do this like nothing. Here you go. Like you can just jump in. Yeah, definitely it doesn't work that way. I did want to ask too, I mean, you've done so much with Josh Freese. Like, where does that begin? Do you remember the first thing you ever worked with Josh on, what you guys did together the first time?
Yeah, I mean, the first actual recordings we did was around 2003, 2004 for the record The Dwarves Must Die, where I knew I had this vision. That was a time when I really had a vision of a very sprawling, big record that involved a lot of different things. And part of it was Josh and brought him in, and he had a song. You know, that's always the famous thing, right? Like the drummer has a song, go, you know. But when it's Josh, you know, so I got to write my first song with him, which was "Fuck the Bitch and Go." He had the instrumental, and then I came up with that, and he was laughing, and we're, you know, now there's always some kind of Josh song on every Dwarves record, and you know, I'm just thrilled to have him around, and he just throws things out, and we make great shit happen. But at the same time, it's also about kind of the hardcore side of the Dwarves, you know, where Snoop Hawk and Hunter Down, both great young guys who were drummers, came in. And that's neat too, because you don't have that more session controlled guy that Josh that can kind of do everything. You have these guys that are hungry and young, and they're playing too, you know. So just all kinds of interesting things happen when you put good people together, you know.
I like hearing the like background, like the process of that. That's always interesting to like figure out kind of how a band tends to like, you know, write their stuff, or, you know, if there is even a way. Sometimes it changes up all the time, you know, the way you write a album or a song. I did want to ask, I like asking people this. So going back to the introducing Ralph Champagne record, you know, I mean, besides obviously your first time like recording that way, and I'm sure there are challenges that came up, But in the actual recording session, like when it's being laid down, was there any song that for whatever reason became a pain in the ass to get down? For what you couldn't, you had to do a couple takes for just, I don't know, maybe that guitar.
I mean, and some of them, it's over a period of years. Like the song, we have a song called "Wanna Die," and I wrote it a long time ago. And I always knew that it was a funny little clever song about I want to die. I've written a lot of songs about wanting to die. I wish that I was dead, various things. Right? But, you know, I knew that this was kind of a funny, catchy song. But every time we tried to do it as a band, it was just terrible. I could never get it to sound like anything. And even on this last record, you know, we had so many songs. We were doing great. And I said, okay, let's try Want to Die. And we started playing it and it sucked. And I was just like, okay, wait a minute. Let's just slow this thing down. Let's just go, you know, 40 beats a minute slower than we're doing right now. And just try and find something different in this song. So we did that. And I think that the drum part was right. And ultimately I was able to put a decent vocal on it, but the music still wasn't right. So then I sent it, even though it's a Dwarves song, to Tom, who I'd done this Ralph Champagne record with, and I said, you make something out of this with this guitar and these kind of lyrics. And then he started making something interesting out of it. So then I went back and added the guitar player from the Dwarves to that, because he sort of heard a weird guitar solo and said, okay, now I think I know what to do with this. So yeah, it was strange. That was a song that literally has been bedeviling me across 4 records and like 15 years. I know that there's a song there somewhere, and I know it's okay, and I just don't know what to do with it. You know,
I mean, kind of going off that too, like, can you tend to tell pretty fast if a song is worth continue like that? Like, can you also go, you know, I don't know, you like start writing a song and pretty fast you can go, okay, this isn't worth my time to keep working on, and then the ones where I go, well, maybe there's something redeeming here. Like, is that something you can normally tell pretty fast?
Yeah, see, it's complicated because I used to write whole records on guitar. You know, I wrote the chord changes, I did whatever. And the older I got, the more I found myself repeating myself. And I knew that I wasn't going to become some kind of instrumentalist guy. So I became more interested in other people's instrumentals and then making vocal melodies and lyrics on top of that. So my process kind of changed. I still write stuff on guitar sometimes, but in very random ways, you know. So I think there were a lot of songs that I eliminated when I was playing guitar a lot and saying, oh, shit, I've already done that. But really, if I would have just stuck with a vocal melody, there probably was something there. I just needed somebody better than me to make a different chord progression with it or make something, a different kind of arrangement, you know. So now I'm more, you know, tune into whatever that instrumental is and try and make sure my part is good and interesting, you know. So I don't throw stuff away as much. And the other thing is, like, people who are very prolific and very musical, they just come up with stuff every day, and then so they throw more stuff away than me.
You're not someone like every day just pop it, you know, 1,000 things pop out.
I'm more of a soul surfer. I'm not just out, like, I only come up with a song when I have a song. But I know a lot of people who are like music people, and they come up with a fucking 5 songs a day because that's a smart move, you know. That kind of shit. No, people who are songwriters, and they're just like, gotta have lots of material. Everybody wants something new. Nobody wants to hear your old thing, you know. And I would tell like a good producer about this song, and they'd be like, "You've been kicking that around for 7 years, dude. Why don't you just give up on that one?" And it's like, because I don't have enough ideas to give up on things, and I know this is good. I just have to figure out what to do with it. Whereas like people who are more productive and on it, they don't do that usually. You know, they're more like, oh yeah, we kissed that away on that session. We didn't need it. We got this and we did this.
Nothing sacred. They just whatever. I'll write 5 more tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. And that isn't me, you know. And I feel like that's because I'm a lyricist more than anything. And when you come up with a great lyric, you know this is good, and the people are going to like this, and this is interesting, or this really sums up this kind of piece of music. You know, you hear something with a breezy feel, and I came up with Nothing to Say. You know, that was a song that was written as a rock and roll song. Tried to do it with the band, and it was never any good. Then when it was like a yacht rock studio production song, it all made sense. So it actually was a good song, but it sucked as a band song. And it was like, we don't want to do that one. It isn't any good. Like, no, it actually turned out to be really good, just in a different context.
That is it. I think that's so interesting that, like how one song can go from we can't for whatever reason make this work to then it can be like amazing. It could be like, oh my God, like this song, like, thank God you never got rid of this. Like it's a good thing you held on to that. And I'm sure that has to be musically gratifying to go, you've been kicking this idea around forever and for whatever reason it doesn't work. And then all of a sudden you go, oh shit, this works. All of a sudden this is good.
Yes. And also just, I'm in my mid 50s to make a record like this now. That's a whole artistic leap for me. That's different. And it isn't just the standard, like, well, now I mellowed out and I did something mellow. I think, no, this is a completely different kind of a record, completely differently made record. And that's just super gratifying, and you get there by having material and kind of knowing how to recognize what to do with it.
Do you, can you see it all? I mean, it sounds like you had a great group of musicians on the Ralph Champagne record. Could you see this playing, even if it's not tours per se, could you see doing live shows for this at all? Would you want to do some?
I would love to do it live. I mean, I could absolutely see doing it. Yes. I just it's so hard to put a band together. And especially with this particular record worth of guys, you got some guys that are like,
Josh Freese would probably
countryish guys that you couldn't even get on the phone, and then you got guys that are like, "I'm busy, dude. I got a real gig. I can't fuck with you." So I mean, there's just so many different kinds of guys made this record what it is, and they're all little prickly, idiosyncratic people in their own way, just like I am, and they got their shit they want to do.
I'd love to hear these songs live.
Records are interesting because they kind of touch you at a particular point in time, and a lot of people that work on them aren't really thinking about it. Again, it's like, I played some great parts for that guy, and then tomorrow I'll play some great parts for somebody else and whatever, but I'm sitting there obsessing on it like, oh, wow, this was a whole new thing. It just always puts you in a new place vis-a-vis doing it. Whereas when you have a band, you know people and their personalities, and it's like, well, this guy doesn't like to be woken up in the morning, and this guy doesn't like you to tell him what to play, and this guy really likes a lot of direction, and this guy, everybody's different. That's why bands are so fucked up and crazy, because I can bring everybody together on my object, everybody gets along fine and everything's great. But when you have a band and you start doing things, that's a whole different world, That's just a world of insane fucking people and their insane shit.
Well, I hope one day to hear these songs live, because I would love to see these translated live. But I also want to talk. I mean, again, like I was saying, how damn busy you are. You do have a brand new book called Highland Falls. I mean, you want to tell us a little bit about the new book?
Yeah. So Highland Falls is the follow-up to my last book, which came out, I think, in 2008, maybe 2009. It was called Nina. And it was basically the story of a very oversexed kind of pranksterish teenage girl. And, she kind of runs roughshod over the people in her life and has a good time and runs around. And so then this book, Highland Falls, was sort of the follow-up to that. Highland Falls is her kind of suburban Illinois town that she lives in. And so it introduces some other characters from there, some it's a little more novel-like.
Nice. I also, it looked really neat. I mean, on top of the book coming out, you also have the audiobook I see available on vinyl. Did you narrate that as well?
So that was weird. Yeah. So that was another thing I did over the pandemic. Again, like I was sitting there like, okay, well, I wrote this fucking book, so I might as well do the audio book because, I'm here at my fucking house and there's a microphone,
Makes sense.
So yeah, I did the audio book, which is a lot more work than you're expecting when you go to do it. And so I gave the audiobook to the publishers, Rare Bird, and Rare Bird puts out a lot of like music books, whereas my book is just fiction. So I was really glad they did that because I thought it was the right home for it around like music people, but it's not a music book. It's more of a dirty book, a lot of humor and that type of thing. So so what happened with that was Tyson, the guy at Rare Bird, took the first few chapters and then had somebody put some kind of synthesizer music behind it. I wasn't really part of the music thing. And then he sent it to me and said, "What do you think about this?" And I thought it was really neat. So he did vinyl, this limited vinyl of it. And it's kind of that weird kind of mind hunter like synth music, you know, that I wouldn't have come up with that, but it's a cool way to accompany the thing. So I thought it was very interesting that he came up with that.
Yeah, you don't see many audiobooks, and that's kind of a different twist on a traditional, just, you know, the guy who wrote the books narrating it in audiobook form. Like, this is kind of a nice little added layer to it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was stoked that he did it. And vinyl's always more fun than, you know, just digital things. So there's that, you know, you get an artifact, and, you know, there's a great cover too. And they reprinted the whole nice, there's an Italian artist, Zoe Lachey, very good illustrator. And she did the illustration of Nina, that character, for Highland Falls. And so we use that on the gatefold of the record. So it's neat. You know, there's a lot of cool art, and it's kind of more feminine because Zoe has that this very bold, great style, but it's decidedly feminine too, you know. And I thought that would be a cool way to do the book, you know, and give you the sense that it was a female character, you know.
Was this your first time doing an audiobook? Have you ever narrated an audiobook in the past?
No, I had never done one before, although I went back. Rare Bird is going to reprint Nina as well as my very first book. I wrote a book in the 90s, which was very just experimental kind of word salad, called Armed to the Teeth with Lipstick. And that one is it's like a weird kind of detective novel, science fiction, a lot of violence, sex, blah, blah. And that was illustrated by Mad Mark Rude, who was a great punk rock artist of the, you know, he did like the Earth AD for the Misfits, and did, you know, he's kind of a guy like Pusthead or somebody like that.
Oh, yeah.
Detailed drawings of, you know, and a lot of death metal, speed metal, rock and roll kind of stuff. And so I did that illustrated book with him back then. And that too is coming out. So I went back and made audiobooks for all of those.
Oh shit. Okay, so you've now went from doing no audiobooks to now you've done a few.
Yeah, I did 3.
Wow.
Yeah, and those should be coming out as the books get republished. So yeah, very excited. I mean, just tons of stuff. I did a lot of stuff. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of people kind of the pandemic threw them off, but I'm more of a self-starter. So I was able to get all this material going and really generate a lot of stuff and make it quality. And then I lost my shit. After a year and a half of working super hard, being like, okay, everybody else is freaking out, I got this. You know? Then it was like, oh shit, the world's collapsed. But I had all this work done, fortunately. So now it's all coming out as I come to grips with the end of the world.
But you got some audiobooks out of it, the end of the world. But hey, I got some stuff going on. On. You know, I mean, it's kind of interesting too, thinking about it. Like, I mean, for you writing a book, sitting down and writing a book versus like sitting down and writing lyrics. I mean, I assume they're different, but how drastically different? Are you in a different headspace or mindset to write one or the other, or is it all kind of just creatively writing? You know what I mean? Like the differences there. Explain it a little bit.
You know, a lot of the songs I write are for me to sing, and so they're for a particular character, and that really influences what types of things I can get away with saying or not get away with saying. As Blag, you know, it's got to be funny and to the point, and it's got to be sort of scatological, dirty. It's you know, that's who that guy is. And then when you then go and try and write a song for somebody else, you know, which I've done some of, you know, you have to put yourself in their headspace. It's different, you know. And when you get to a book, it's even more like that. You have to put yourself into your character's headspace, and there's multiple characters. So writing like a female, that was part of why I took that on. because I've heard a lot about how sexist or misogynist my work is, and I never considered it that way. So I thought, well, okay, if I'm going to write, maybe I'll write from a female perspective, and you'll see that this is more of like misanthropy, not misogyny, and this is more about sort of having a nihilistic view of everything, as opposed to just of women, you know. So it's writing the book is different, you know. For the when I do music, I very much, it's an id process. It's very much just whatever I feel like saying. So it is coming from a straight white man who's angry and screaming a lot. You know, whereas if I'm writing a book or I'm writing a song for somebody else, I have to put myself into where they're coming from and where they're, you know, so it's much different.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I was wondering. I didn't think they'd be totally the same, but that's kind of fun though too. There's almost a freedom then in writing the book or just writing for someone else. Because I mean, again, it's like you were saying. I mean, it's, I guess, a chance to take a break from writing in your voice or the style that, you know, people would expect from you, and kind of doing something different.
Right. Yeah, it's the same way you'd read something different than what you write, or listen to something different than what you play. I've always loved a lot of music that's really not similar to what I would do. You know, it's their way of communicating who they are. You know, in a book, you've got more latitude. You know, I don't have to be myself. I have to be a bunch of other people, you know. In rock and roll and in music in general, we put a lot of value on being yourself and being real, you know. So that's sort of one side of it. But there's other sides of it too. You know, the people who support the other people being real, the people who actually know how to play the instruments, or actually know what notes they're doing, or actually know what key something should be in, or whatever.
You, if I'm not mistaken, too, it looks like you're doing some like maybe book signings and book readings. Are you doing a couple things for Highland Falls?
Yeah, so there's going to be in Los Angeles at the last bookstore. We're doing one. Rare Bird put out my book, but they also put out Leftover Cracks Oral History.
Oh, nice.
So we're combining, and we're going to do, Brad Logan is an old friend of mine, and he's going to, you know, play some Leftover Crack stuff. We're going to talk about that book, and then we're going to, you know, talk about my book, and I'll play a little, and just be a little event. You know, it's a book thing, so it's free. It's on a Monday night. You know, everybody should go out if you're in LA. I mean, it'll be an interesting thing. And then in San Francisco, a couple days later, same kind of thing on a Wednesday, up by City Lights Books. There, we're going to do a similar kind of event, a little bit of music. A band called Uke Hunt that's very interesting. You know, and some reading from the books. And you know, I try and keep it light and fun. I'm not trying to get anybody, you know, pull them too deep into my literary orbit. You know, it's fairly light stuff, you know, but it's there's a lot of there's some meat there if you're looking for it, but it's also nice and superficial if you just want to hear some funny stuff and move on with it, you know.
Nice. Well, I mean, just a few more for you here. I'll let you go. I do have to ask. Well, yesterday, it literally, I don't know, it was like, yeah, it was sometime this time yesterday, as I should have been writing interview questions. I found myself reading a article that Butch Vig talking about like his favorite like pieces of instruments at Smart Studios, and he's talking about a Shure SM7B. And one of his quips was that the first band to ever use it was the Dwarves, and that you burned a hole in the pop filter. And after reading that, I got to know, is there a story behind that? Do you recall burning a hole in the pop filter? Like, is there any more?
The story for me is that we were so naive that they said, hey, guys, we're sending you out to Butch Vig's studio to make your record. And I thought, great, we're going to get to work with Butch Vig. But I never met the guy. You know, we got his friend or something. I mean, it was like, yeah, we're in his studio. Where's he? You know, I mean, it was just so typical of us that, you know, nobody was really, the lights were on, but nobody was home, you know, and we didn't know what the fuck we were doing, you know. So, yeah, I wish I would have gotten to meet Butch. That would have been nice. I wish I would have gotten to make a record with him. That would have been nice, you know. If I left my joint in his SM7, that's tough fucking shit.
I mean, he obviously remembers you. You may not have recorded with him, but it's the last thing in the article about that SM7B, dude.
That's what it's like. The Dwarves were very legendary, but we were ignored. I wish more people would have taken us more seriously. To Butch Vig, all we are is somebody that burned a hole in something. Whereas to me, we were an actual band that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather have the story than nothing.
That's true. That's true.
A lot of people got a story about like seeing my dick or hearing me scream fuck or whatever, but they didn't bother listening to anything that I did. So, okay, fair enough. At least you got some of the rock and roll of it.
They got something out of it. Yeah. I mean, kind of with Dwarves too. I mean, anything else that you can talk about Dwarves wise? You guys working on anything or anything coming up in the near future?
We got a whole double album recorded.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, we hadn't been in the studio tracking since like 2016.
Oh, wow.
We went in February and we just had an avalanche of songs. And it was me and Fresh Prince of Darkness, Rex Everything, Nick Oliveri, Snoop Hawk, Josh Freese, just a bunch of great players and a bunch of cool people, and we just made a bunch of sick songs. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff recorded. It just needs to be mixed now.
Nice. So yeah, then near future, more music from you then.
Can't stop, won't stop, man. We just keep crushing it.
Is like touring, you assume 2023, can we assume some Dwarves touring probably?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think we're doing New Year's Eve with Zeke up north there in Portland and Seattle. So that'll be a very vintage 90s event for people who are into that. And supposed to play a little bit down south, TSOL. So we'll see if that stuff happens in Orange County and LA. So, just, as long as I'm playing with a good band, I'm happy. If I get to be out there, Zeke, PSOL, whoever wants to play with me, I'm stoked. There's a bunch of good bands out there.
We talked about it a little bit earlier, but are there any Dwarf songs off top of your head you think would translate really well into a Ralph Champagne style song, and then vice versa? Are there any Ralph Champagne songs where you go, damn, that might sound cool?
There's a few that should have been, that's a really good question. I mean, the thing for me, the dividing line is kind of lyrically, it's because some of the Ralph Champagne stuff is like bawdy and dirty in that sense, but it's more like good natured and fun. The Dwarves are very like in your face, nasty, so some of it doesn't work lyrically, but some of it does. Like a song like Better Be Women, just like it's sexual in theme, but it's funny and kind of lighthearted, songs like Lucky Tonight is kind of funny, like they're the ones that were a little lighter lyrically. The Dwarves sometimes were very, very heavy on you lyrically,
Yes, so that's true.
That stuff doesn't translate as well to Ralph Champagne, but the stuff that's lighter and more fun, even things like Everybody's Girl or One Time Only, the sort of lighter, funnier stuff. Or
well, one more for you, then I'll let you go. And I just have to ask this because I only realized this, I guess, the last couple years. But as a 29-year-old, I never thought of it. But my exposure to you long before the Dwarves was SpongeBob. I mean, you doing the Sponge. I mean, I gotta ask, how did that come about? How'd you get involved? Did you write the song? Like, because I never thought of it. I mean, I've been listening to Dwarves for a long time, but now we're going back to like, that was like age 6 Anthony was listening to Blag.
Sponge is probably the most well-known thing that I'll ever do, which is a sobering thought, Yeah, so that came about through my good friend Saltpeter, who was the original bass player and sort of helped me start the Dwarves. He was friendly with the guy who did SpongeBob, and it was their first season. It had never come up yet. He knew him just through like day job stuff or something. He didn't know him like as professionally. And SpongeBob was a very low budget. It didn't have any, nobody knew that it was going to be a big hit. And so he said to my friend, hey, you take little tracks on a 4-track. Like, can you do something? I just want something kind of trashy sounding, kind of sounds like the Clam. And so he came up with that dance, "You Threw the Sponge," and so Saltpeter from the Dwarves wrote that, and also wrote a lot of the SpongeBob stuff. And anyway, they didn't feel comfortable approaching Lux Interior for no money, but they were fine hitting me up. It was the first season, and they were like, "Can you just imitate Lux Interior?" So that's what I've been doing all along. So I came in and imitated Lux and sang Saltpeter's song, and it was on the first season. By the end of that season, they were a huge established hit. Everybody loved them. And Pete went on to write a bunch of songs for them. I never got to sing on there again. It would have been nice, but I guess they wanted different stuff. They got Lux the next season and did a song called Underwater Sun. And so, yeah, I guess but that's my claim to fame.
It's just a wild. I often forget that, but I go, yeah, I guess I've been listening to you even longer than I realized. But
yeah, that's why it's always fun to do little things and see. You never know what's going to take off.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm sure when you did that, like you were saying, in its first season, you're like, this is going to go away. This isn't something I'll be talking about 20 years later.
Yes, exactly.
But I mean, Blag, it has been so much fun, an honor talking to you. As we close out, I mean, where do we find the new Ralph Champagne record? Where do we get Highland Falls? Where do we find you online? Like all that good stuff.
Man, I got Instagram. We got the Dwarves Instagram and all that stuff. But the best place to go for Dwarf stuff, is just thedwarves.com. Because when you hit the merch thing, we sell like the book signed and the records signed, all the vinyls signed. So you kind of get a more specialized thing if you go to thedwarves.com. But, hopefully you can find it in stores too, MVD distributes our stuff, so it tends to get out to stores, the music but go see us live. You always got to see the Dwarves live, be reminded of a band that can still do it.
Fuck yeah.
And check out thedwarves.com and wherever we are, check us out. Legends.
Well, great. It's fun if you're listening to the podcast. We'll play you a song or two off introducing Ralph Champagne. If you're listening to the radio show, we have a 4-hour radio show, so we'll play that damn record front to back. You will hear all of.
Honored, yeah. It's like an old '70s record that really holds up throughout. You can go all the way, and then just when you get to the end, there's a special surprise that you're not expecting at all as the last track. So, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff on the introducing Ralph Champagne record.
Well, depending what you're listening, you're shit out of luck if you're listening to the podcast. You get a song or two, but radio show, you get to hear the whole record. You're gonna hear everything we've been talking about.
You can go up on YouTube, listen to the whole thing. You got to check out the Lolita Goodbye video. Very funny video.
It is.
Some friends from LA made for us, and beautiful women and hilarious sets, and it's a great video.
Awesome. Well, here we go. We got a song for you right now. The opening track off introducing Ralph Champagne. This is It's Over right here on the Power Chord Hour. Right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast off Blag Dahlia's new album, Introducing Ralph Champagne. There he was with Elementary Love Song, and opening up that block of music was the opener off the new album, Introducing Ralph Champagne. That was It's Over. I want to thank Blag again. I mean, such a fun time talking to him. I saw he was releasing that album while I was out on my trip for Alaska, and when I was trying to think of people to have on when I was getting back, I was like, oh, I got to have him on. I got a promo of that album and got to listen to it a decent amount while I was traveling and everything, and I was like, oh, yeah, we definitely got to have him in, for sure. And definitely listen to some Dwarves as well while I was out there. Listen to the song Salt Lake City a good amount while I was driving through Utah. Just a classic. But they're one of those great bands. I mean, they definitely can be written off at times just, for the lyrics and the aesthetic or the visuals of the band, if you will. I mean, I don't think I'm talking out of line here. I think if you know the Dwarves, you kind of know what goes with them. But at the end of the day, I mean, my God, like they, including Blag, it's like, those vocal melodies and stuff, the man has a knack for it, I mean, no matter what he's singing about or what he's saying, like you can't deny the knack for melody there and everything. But also, I mean, the cleverness of that, there's also a part of it that does take talent to be able to write something in such a great way, but not take it so seriously, and, you know, kind of have fun with the lyrics of the music and stuff, and not take yourself as an artist so seriously. You know, trust me, there's a lot of musicians who cannot do that. There's a lot of great proficient musicians who can probably write a great melody, but take themselves way, way too seriously, and their music way, way too seriously, and, you know, ends up holding them back. But I love talking to him. Great getting into everything. I mean, there's so much you could talk about. I mean, there's still so much I didn't get to with him. But, I mean, between Blag and Greg Graffin last week, definitely some punk rock legends, which is very cool. I have a few more. I won't say who, because I don't have them confirmed 100%, but I am in the talks with a couple, like, legendary bands and artists and stuff to kind of close out the rest of the year here on the Power Chord Hour podcast. But, yeah. I got a few more slots for guests, so I'm kind of filling that out, and then I do have a few booked. And next week, I do know who we have. We have Buffalo band The Eves, a great newer band. I don't want to say totally new, because a lot of times, like I'll discover a band. You know, they are a newer band, but they've been around since like 2017, 2018. So I mean, that's 4 or 5 years. So I mean, not you know, they didn't just start yesterday. I mean, we'll be talking about their new sophomore record, but excellent band from up the road in Buffalo. And if you're not from here, I mean, you're listening to the podcast, there's a good chance you're not in Jamestown, New York right now. But Buffalo's like 90 minutes from us. So I always consider it local or up the road. It depends who you talk to around here, but I mean, again, I can be in Buffalo in about 90 minutes, and if I speed, I can be there even faster. So, like, I mean, they're a county next to us, and that's only where I'm at. If you actually go to the end of Chautauqua County, it's like maybe a 40-minute drive to Buffalo from the end of Chautauqua County to where Erie County, I believe, Buffalo is in. I don't know. We're getting to boring shit territory, but what I'm saying is we live very close to Buffalo, and I'm talking to a very rad band from Buffalo called The Eves next week, and a really good band. The new record is out now, so if you go look up The Eves, there is music to check out until we talk to them. So get yourself a little educated on The Eves. They're a really good band, and I will tell you, after watching some live video, I definitely want to see them live. And again, up the road, so I shall make that happen. But we'll be talking to them next week, and again, kind of getting a few more around for December. I mean, my God, I can't believe it. I'll be doing the November rundown here in 2 weeks, and I'm already thinking about the Album of the Year episode, which will probably kick off next year. I mean, shit, there's a lot to work on, you know? I guess going away for 6 weeks, I came back to a lot to work on. I never stop with this show. But, yeah, back next week with another one. Until then, follow the Power Chord Hour online. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Power Chord Hour. Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps so much, I can't even tell you. If you'd like to donate to the show, help show costs, because this show definitely costs me money. It don't really make me money. It costs me money, but goddamn do I love it. But if you want to send a few bucks my way, in the show description, there's a link for our PayPal and our Cash App. I was going to say pay me. How about donate? That's a better way to say it. Don't pay me, motherfucker. No, donate. I won't, unless aggressive is what you need, then pay up, motherfucker, and, send some money to the PayPal or the Cash App. But if aggressive marketing isn't your thing, if you can find it in your heart, donate a couple bucks, definitely appreciated. But yeah, again, it depends how you want to take that. You can, if the aggression makes you donate, sweet. If being sweet makes you donate, well, sweet to that as well. But yeah, I don't have much else to say. Just letting you know, I had a fun time talking to Blag, and we'll be back next week with The Eves. But until then, for the Power Chord Hour, I'm Anthony Merchant. Thank you so much for listening.